Good afternoon, Bermuda. I have the privilege of sitting with the Commissioner of Police, Mr. Stephen Corbishley. We're simply going to take some of the questions from you on Facebook Live and Bermuda in general. We're going to ask for you to forward this link onto anyone, and we're just going to be here for about 30 minutes answering some questions. I'm looking on my little feed to see if when it comes up. Nothing as yet. Is the government of Bermuda, yes? Yes, we are live. Okay, so we're live, and I'm here with the Commissioner of Police, and we're going to have the opportunity to just simply talk with people about what's going on. Commissioner, thank you for sitting with me. As you know, we are in unprecedented times. The government and the Cabinet, in consultation with His Excellency, has made the unprecedented step since 1977 to issue an emergency order to do certain things. Yesterday when we were talking, I love your words, and so you shared with me when we were meeting that words were really important on how we shared it with the community. Talk to me about the why do you think words are so important, and why did you coin the phrases that you used, and tell us more about the phrases.
I think the thing is, Minister, what we don't want to do is alarm people.
Sure.
And this is a really challenging time for not just the country but for the world. And the last pandemic of this size goes back to 1918 with the Spanish flu. And I think language and communication is really important.
Sure.
It's not to hide the truth, but when you start seeing things like curfews, yes, and lockdowns,
yes,
and even the Royal Gazette article today, the title was Under Siege.
Yeah.
It makes people panic.
Of course.
And I'd rather describe what we're trying to do, which is work with the community, because you can't tell people what to do. You have to get agreement, and you have to get people to understand. So things like when we stop people, they are community advisory points, yes, because they are for the community to engage with them positively, to explain and to encourage them to follow the health guidelines. And similarly with the things that have been put in place from this weekend, it's a community protection measure. I really like the term community protection measure, and the reason why that resonates with me is because that's ultimately what we're trying to do. We have a virus that the COVID-19 virus, and what we're trying to do is limit its spread in Bermuda. And so the terminology community protection plan, that when you said that yesterday, I think for me all the lights went on, because that is what we're trying to do. And so when we use terminologies like shelter in place, yeah, those are key terminologies that we're trying to do. I drove across some of the grocery stores this morning, and in the main, everyone was well behaved. Yeah. There was some significant social distancing taking place, but heretofore, I would have expected, just based on how I've seen in other countries, that people would have been bulk buying in excess, that there would have been a lot more bad behavior at the grocery stores. That actually wasn't the case in Bermuda. And I think people feel confident, number one, that the government is in control, that the Emergency Measures Organization has some clear planning, that the Ministry of Health is there. But I also think with your ethos of the community protection plan, people can have the confidence that whilst we are going to be at community advisory points, that they are not 1977 the last time they saw, yeah, it. There were guns, there were shields, it was a really aggressive stance. That is actually not the case in these sets of circumstances. Can you talk to us a bit more? And I'm going to in a minute go to what I believe, I'm going to go through some the places that are closed, and we'll talk about that. Yeah. But tell me what a person can anticipate in a stop when they go across in the island. Well, just to echo your points, I think we're on a journey.
Sure.
And the journey started, and actually positively we've seen Bermuda embrace that journey. The curfew checks are going well. We see very little movement on the island, only for essential workers. The engagements our officers have had, and hardly anything at all in regards to problems. But what people can expect in going forward is it will be challenging.
Yes.
And
yes.
we're not used to staying indoors. Somebody said to me the other day, it's difficult enough at Christmas time when you've got the family.
I trust my daughter. My daughter, I want to put in the microwave on high.
And there's some important issues about that when people are confined, and we'll touch on how perhaps people might be worried or vulnerable a bit later on. But we are asking people to stay at home. In fact,
yes.
we're requiring them to stay at home. And there are caveats that the regulations allow, so essential travel to the groceries, and
sure.
and I'm sure you'll echo this. This is something the Premier said. Don't panic, Bermuda.
Yes.
The grocery stores are open.
Can I ask a question? How many officers will you have on duty for the next 2 weeks?
Well, we have 411 officers across the Bermuda Police Service. I took the decision the other day to put everybody in uniform,
sure.
and the reason for that is twofold. One is I want our service to be seen in the public, so we're there to reassure, look after people, but also we're able to swap over roles because we've got to protect our health as well.
Sure.
And the role of policing is in the community, and we're stopping doing certain things which we can afford to do, and we're concentrating about getting out and about.
Sure.
So we've got the advisory points. We're going to be visiting our vulnerable people in the community. We're going to look into our seniors. We're going to engage with some of our community leaders. And I don't want to be in a position where we criminalise or we start being heavy-handed. That will not happen.
Sure.
But I've got to say, Minister, and I'm sure you'll support me, is there is a line.
Yes.
And if people choose to ignore some of the directions, they're putting everybody's health in danger. And there may be occasions, I hope not, but there may be occasions where we have to take enforcement action. And indeed, we arrested a gentleman last night who was out beyond the curfew at 1 o'clock in the morning, and he will go to court at some point. Now
and I think the legislation on the Summary Offences Act 1926, it is $2,880 or a 6-month period of imprisonment, or both the term of imprisonment and the fine.
And that's one person out of 60,000+.
Yeah.
But the most important thing, and people do recognise this, and it's not teaching people to suck eggs, one person who perhaps is carrying the virus causes risk to everybody else.
Absolutely. And I think the Bermuda Regiment, they have about approximately 90 soldiers that are embodied now. They have the ability to scale up to about 250.
Yeah.
And so we will, the acting commanding officer of the Bermuda Regiment, if the need requires, he will reach out to His Excellency and ask for the ability to embody more soldiers. And I think that might be a welcome suggestion from me as the Minister, because we were in this for the long haul. I simply want to just take a minute to acknowledge the Ministry of Health. The Ministry of Health, under the leadership of the Chief Medical Officer and the Minister of Health, the Honourable Kim Wilson, they for 13 weeks have been planning.
Yeah.
They have been in the trenches. The epidemiologists, the chief nurse, the entire team, they have been working under the gun to put this plan together. And so sometimes we do not understand, and we think that this is just taking place overnight. I would definitely like to tip my hat to the Department of Health and the staff and the people that have been putting together this plan over the last few months. I look at the Minister of Health and everything that comes through. She's actually taking the lead on a number of this and giving us guidance, and she has a team that have been working from Caines morning to Caines night putting this together, and they should be applauded for the work that they're doing. So in my department, we have something called the Disaster Risk Reduction and Mitigation Team, the DERM, and they are a team that simply helps Bermuda when there's a national time of disaster, and they too have been giving all of the information that we need, putting the planning together. So when people say, well done, Minister, I actually am standing on the shoulders of our DERM team that are also working around the clock to make sure that we have this plan that goes forward, and we're really, really excited about them and what they're doing for our country. And I think I want to assure the people of Bermuda that these plans are not being made in a vacuum. We have the Emergency Measures Organization. The EMO normally has about 60 or 70 people on the EMO executive, and we thought it important to make it COVID specific now. Within the COVID element of the EMO, we have a core group of people that are advising on key things and where do we go next, and that is really significant. But within the EMO COVID part of it, we have a operational team, which you are the significant player in, that talks about the operations of the Bermuda Regiment and of the Bermuda Police Service, with the governor, the deputy governor, and myself, and members of the DERM that talk about the operational part of it. Talk to me about what you feel about the decision-making body of the EMO when it comes to the operational part. Walk me through what one of our meetings look like in your eyes.
I think, I mean, the point you said, this is very much led by health.
Yes.
And what we're seeking to achieve is to protect people, look after them, and save lives. So collectively, with the EMO, we're all working to that objective. And it's important for people to recognise that we want to keep services in place. So whilst business as usual has changed, access to essential services will remain. Yes. And sometimes you can have a plan, but it's getting into the detail. How do you solve those problems? And a point you said before was, what will it feel like for people? And okay, it's going to be difficult. You're going to wake up in the morning and there are restrictions. But there is the opportunity to leave your home on foot, and this is important. You can't get in your car, and if you live down in St George's, you can't drive over to another part of the island to exercise. On foot, go out up to half a mile approximate, get some fresh air in groups of no more than 2, which is challenging. And that's important though for people's well-being, but practicing social distance. Going to the grocery stores, 1 person per household. And the reason for that is obvious. We want to minimise the amount of people in the grocery stores, maintain social distancing, and so on. How the police will play a role in this, and supported by the regiment, is people may be challenged. And when I say challenged, is asked where they're going.
But if you can stick a pin in it, but it's important for people, even if you're going for a walk half a mile from your home, you have to have some ID on you, because you will be asked specific questions. And so if you live on Baden Bowl Lane in Somerset, and they see you by Devonshire Wreck, you can't say I'm going for a walk.
Yeah.
The reality of it is we want people to understand that we are not trying to heavily police them. We're simply trying to balance how our community works. We cannot say to you must shop at a specific area, but we're suggesting and recommending that if you live in the West End, go to a grocery store in the West End. If you live in the Southampton parishes and the Warwick parishes, go to a grocery store. Now, my wife, and I shouldn't use her as an example, but because she isn't here, I will. She buys a little something from Marketplace, and she goes to Miles for a couple of things, and she goes to Linda's for a couple of things. She's not going to be able to do that for the next 2 weeks. You know, we're going to simply say that go to Marketplace, or go to Linda's, or go to another store and get the goods that you need for 7 days. Have some identification on you. When you go to the store, expect a bit of a wait. Make sure that you are socially distanced apart. Have the ability to interact with everyone respectfully. Understand that there will be security officers at the stores. There will be stations for you to wash your hands. And we're trying to help everyone to understand our new normal, what it will look like for the next 2 weeks. There is a core system that we have to remember, that we are doing this to protect our community. And when we say to people, listen, the gyms are closed, the bars are closed, the golf clubs are closed, the parks are closed, the beaches are closed, that is significant. A number of people love to go for a swim. Be not confused. As of Saturday, the beaches will be closed. The parks will be closed. A number of people are going to the Arboretum to work out in the Arboretum. That will not be allowed. I'm getting on Facebook, on Instagram, on my WhatsApp, on emails, I have gotten over the last 24 hours over 1,000 messages where everyone asking me about their dog, about their chicken, about their cat. We have to understand that there are some things that we have to do differently. If you're going to exercise, that you can go a half a mile from your home on foot, maximum 2 people. Carry ID with you. It is a possibility that you will be challenged or asked questions by a police officer. Try to do so once a day. So we do not want anybody taking the mickey or mucking about and just walking up and down the street for the whole day. We're saying that you're going to be challenged. We need to be responsible as we go through this. I'm just going to take a couple minutes to ask our Nia to give us a couple questions from online, and we'll try to answer them.
Good afternoon, Minister. Good afternoon, Police Commissioner. Thank you very much for facilitating this chat.
What our numbers are like? How many people are watching?
I believe we have about 490 people
Okay.
who are watching, so people are tuned in.
Sure.
I'm just pulling some questions that were asked earlier today. I'm going to name the individual who's asked the question, specifically about restaurants and deliveries. So if we can be clear about this, from Lisa Simpson, she's asking, may you please confirm or elaborate on restaurant deliveries, reason being, included in the ban, farm stand produce pickups, half-mile limit on walks, thank you. I think you touched on the half-mile.
Restaurants will be closed, no restaurant deliveries.
Okay.
There is no ambiguity there. Restaurants will be closed. There will be no deliveries for restaurants.
Very good. I have another question from Claire Simons. Will laundromats be open or closed for those who don't have washing facilities at home?
That is something, so there are some questions that we are still looking at, and we will have a further, wherever there is a point that is not clear, we will have a further update be given at 5:30 today. That is one of the questions that we'll give some clarity on at 5:30 today.
Okay, very good, Minister. We had another question regarding transportation. Can taxi drivers that drive essential service workers continue to operate?
No. So if you are an essential worker, so we do not want to give any blanket exceptions. If there is a taxi driver and he's taking a specific person, that taxi driver should reach out to R. Cardwell at bps.bm for specific permission for that person. Let's just talk about the exemption list. We gave out an address for the exemption list. As of this morning, there were 530 different entities seeking exemptions. Within some of those requests, there are 40 and 50 people from specific companies. Can you imagine making a decision based on not having a virus spread and so many people want exemptions? It is not practicable to give blanket exceptions to people. The team, though they are overwhelmed, they are taking their time. I know that Inspector Devine has been added to their list. Inspector Shakisha Minus has been added to their list. And the Chief, I'll let you go ahead. I'm actually out of my belly.
I think a point that was raised yesterday, Minister, in the EMO was that we've previously described things as essential workers. The term that was used yesterday is critical workers. And it is going to be very difficult for people to accept that. This is a time where the one way to beat this virus is for us to isolate. And that will take Bermuda to a very strong place to stop the spread of COVID-19. And let's be clear, to stop people from dying. And I think we just need to be clear about that. This is about protecting lives. So there are huge applications for exemptions, and I get where people are coming from, but we are going to be very firm in regards to critical support. And people will be turned down, no matter what they think in regard to the importance of their role, because it all fulfills back to what we are trying to achieve, which is to stop the spread and transfer of this virus.
Absolutely. I just want to, a number of people are actually hitting me up, and we're going to ask for all of the questions. Can we take another question?
Yeah, Minister, I do have a few more questions. Here's an interesting one regarding shelter in place. Do you have to be inside the rest of the day, or can you sit outside?
If you're in your yard, if you're in your garden, if you're on your porch, of course you can be outside of your house. Let's go back to what the idea is. The idea is that we respect social distancing and we do not pass this on. If you're in your own home, of course you can be in your yard, on your porch, in your garden, on your veranda, on your sitting out under your pergola. Of course you can. We're also saying there are some people that don't have a yard or a garden and they want to go and stretch their legs. They can go for a walk. We're advising once a day up to half a mile away from their residence. They should be prepared in certain circumstances to be stopped and questioned by a member of the Bermuda Police Service or member of the Bermuda Regiment. They should have ID with them at all times.
Could I just add one point to the Minister, because some questions are coming in from seniors and some of our vulnerable members of the community that are confused and very worried, and that question is coming up. What, can I sit outside? We even had a question this morning of, can I turn the television on? And whilst people might be dismissive of that, it does show the level of worry and concern certain people have. And we're trying to get as much information out as possible, but my point is, this is about us working as a community. So if you have a senior living close by to you, somebody that is vulnerable, learning, whatever, look into them, go and support them, give them some advice. Find out, if you may not have met them before, get their telephone number and you can drop them a line, phone them up. This is about us supporting each other. And whilst people will be with their families and concentrating on themselves, if every one of us worked out 4 or 5 people we can check in with each day, think of the ability that we have as a community to look after each other.
We had a few caregiver questions, Minister and Police Commissioner. I'm just going to ask one, just to give a general flavor. Here's the scenario. My sister and I live in a different household than my parents, who are 88 and 90. We take turns going up to give them medicine and take blood sugar levels for diabetes. Also making sure that they are eating. Do we need permission, or do we fall under the caregiver category?
Well, can I be just really plain? Somebody might have to move in with their parents for the 2 weeks. The reality of it is, we cannot give blanket exceptions to everyone. We have so many people applying for the exemptions. This sacrifice has to be shared. There are so many people asking, can my maid be given an exemption? Can my nanny be given an exemption? The nanny and the caregiver or the home giver might have to move in with your family for the week if you want to use their services. This is an opportunity for us to understand that we have a new normal. If you have parents that you check on a daily basis, this might mean that you might have to move them in with you, or you might have to move in with them for the 2 weeks.
Okay, I have a delivery query. We may have touched on this, but I think it's good to reiterate.
We're going to, with reference to delivery questions, restaurant deliveries are definitely off.
Grocery store delivery.
We're going to have some further, give some further guidance this evening.
Very good. Okay.
I had the opportunity on Sunday night, Commissioner, on Sunday night, I had the privilege of going around and looking at the government shelter. The government shelter is at Barclay Institute. On the first night, there were 3 people in the shelter. Last night, there were 13 people in the shelter. When I went on Sunday night, there were 2 psychiatric nurses. There was Dr. Stanley James that was there for a welfare check. There were about 7 security officers. There was food. They had the ability to talk to they had St. John's Ambulance, they had 4 people there. I was really impressed to see what Mr. Alfred Mabry of the Department of Child and Family Services, the services that they in place, and people with psychiatric nurses there. I think that it was good to know that our vulnerable people have an opportunity. I saw a note from the Secretary of the Corporation of Hamilton today where he indicated that people were a cadre of homeless men were sleeping in some of our parks. How do you anticipate us working through this over the next 14 days?
Yeah, I'm glad you've raised the vulnerable people agenda. I think firstly what you highlight is that we're all connected. And the relationships with partners is very strong, whether it be with Children and Family Services and also the third sector and the voluntary side. One of the things I just want to touch on, which is really important, and we're going to get more information out there. And whilst I said before, sometimes people can go stir crazy, they're going to be indoors for 2 weeks. I recognise there's going to be some people who are actually going to be scared by this. Let's be open, some people suffer domestic abuse, domestic violence, and they're going to be in situations that are perhaps going to worry them. There is help there, and we're going to be publishing a number of different contact numbers for people to reach out. And I'm also keen that we try and get some text numbers as well, because often it's difficult for people to make a telephone call. And we do have environments where we can take people to if they do feel that their safety is at risk, and that's going to be really important. but there will be other vulnerable people as well. I've mentioned our seniors. We've got issues around some of our mental health in the community, and we're working with other providers. Now, people can contact the Bermuda Police Service if they think there's a risk with themselves or indeed with a neighbour, and we will support and engage. But the point is that this is not a blank piece of paper, but there are going to be challenges over the next few days that we've got to adapt to. And that's why I go back to your point before, Minister. You've got people collectively working together to solve problems. And whilst there will be some very firm lines that maybe going to hack a few people off, and I remind them of what we're seeking to achieve, we will be adaptable to be able to respond to the different issues that are raised. But what we want to do is firstly care for people's health, but also look after their well-being, their physical safety, so we all get through this together at the end of the fortnight and we can review. And I'm really confident that we will have made a massive difference to where we are today.
Minister, if I just may, before you add anything else to that, we're getting quite a few queries regarding co-parenting.
This is a difficult one, and so let's deal with this head on. There are a number of blended families that we have in Bermuda. We believe that there are a number of blended families in Bermuda, and people are asking, can I have permission to be on the road with my child? We're going to make a strong recommendation that as of Saturday, whoever home the child or children are to be in on Saturday, that they stay with that parent for 2 weeks. And that is something that families are going to have to work through. We cannot give exemptions to every blended family in Bermuda to be on the road to transport their children. This is a nationwide shelter in place. We're going to ask families that to talk amongst yourselves, bring in a mediator if necessary, but whomever's home the child will be in for as of Saturday morning, that the children should shelter in place with that parent for the 2 weeks.
I think the other thing, Minister, and you spoke about it the other day, there is opportunity for people to be socially connected. Yes. There's lots of, not everybody has it, but there's some great apps out there where you can join lots of people together in the same conversation. Perhaps people reflect on different things that they can do as a family, and my point before about looking in at our seniors, just giving them a telephone call and having a conversation with them. And I think we're all talking about COVID-19, but actually finding out about somebody and what they do and who they are. There's some really interesting stories if we just take the time to have a conversation with people.
Absolutely. I had some questions this morning about churches and recording on Sunday and Saturday. We're going to ask all households of faith to pre-record the messages prior to the to the shelter in place. Again, we're asking for all households of faith to pre-record prior to the shelter in place the church messages, and so they can simply be aired on Saturday or Sunday or whenever the day of worship. If you are a farmer, the category was exempt. But also if you have animals and you need to be out, and so I had a conversation from people that have horses. You are farmers. We're not saying that you have carte blanche to be around the island. Have your ID ready. Drop rcardwell@bps.bm an email, but you are considered a farmer. Go out and feed the animals and go back in. If you have a pet store, the pet store will not be allowed to be open for retail business, but you can go into the pet store and feed the pets.
Minister, I'm just going through all of the queries and comments that are coming through, and I just want to thank everyone who's watching us right now. We really do appreciate your feedback.
What are the numbers like?
So we have about 681 who
That's
are
not
watching
bad.
us right now,
Yeah.
Minister. We had a query about dental offices. Can you please just clarify regarding
Dental offices only open for emergencies. Let me read through some of the
Yeah,
list.
I think that would be very helpful. There's quite a lengthy list, and I think it would
We're
be
just
helpful.
going to take some
if you-
time.
Yeah, so that the public.
People
can
that
hear.
are exempted by the regulations are members of the legislature, the Bermuda Police Service, the Royal Bermuda Regiment, These are essential services that are permitted to operate. The Royal Bermuda Regiment, the Bermuda Hospital Board and their essential contractors, emergency medical services, the Bermuda Fire and Rescue Service, the Bermuda Customs Department, the Bermuda Immigration Department, the Department of Corrections, the medical and paramedical professionals, pharmacists, doctors, veterinarians, caregivers, nurses, orderlies, doctors, and pharmacy workers, public media services, which include radio stations, social media, cable companies, and newspapers and interpreters, Aleph Wade International Airport, service providers to Skyport and their contracted agencies, Balco, stevedores, unloading and loading cargo ships, and the trucking regime that supports this, licensed private security guard, funeral directors and purveyors of funeral services, the Ministry of Works, Waste Management and Water Treatment Plant, and all supporting departments and contractors for collection, storage, treatment, and disposal of waste and garbage. Telecommunications providers, including landline, cell carriers, radio communications. They are only allowed for emergency services. All regular in-store services are suspended. I will say that again. Telecommunications providers, which include cell phone companies, landline providers, and and cable providers. They are opened for only allowed for emergency services only. Regular in-store services are suspended. Utility companies such as gas, water, they are available for emergency call-outs only. Banks are closed for face-to-face contact, ATM providers only. Fuel distributors, gas stations are open, but there must be social distancing practiced. Local fishermen, farmers engaged in agriculture and livestock. Food distributors and supermarkets. Authorized government shelters. Critical cleaning services and sanitation workers. Hotels and villas. Staff performing such services as housekeeping and in-room dining. Note, no gaming rooms, no gyms, no spas, tennis courts, golf courses, or any other recreational services provided by hotels are allowed. All court functions will function under the guidance of the Chief Justice, the Honorable Narinda Hargan, and the Senior Magistrate, the Worshipful Juan Wolf. The curfew will commence as of 6 a.m. April 4th. So when we go under the nightly curfew to shelter in place on Friday night at 8 p.m., we will not come out until 14 days later. Churches are closed. Funerals can be conducted in cemeteries with a maximum of 10 mourners. All weddings are suspended. There will be no social gatherings whatsoever. The public are not permitted to go to areas that are designated as quarantine centers or homes where people are under self-quarantine. The prisons are closed for visitation. All schools remain closed until further advised by the Minister of Education. Visiting senior citizens' homes are not permitted. There will be no visitation to the hospital except for end-of-life visits. All recreational spaces, public beaches, parks, playgrounds are all closed to the public. Community advisory points operated by the Bermuda Police Service and the Royal Bermuda Regiment will be in operation across the island 24 hours a day for the 14-day period. Vehicles and pedestrians will be stopped and asked for the reason for being away from their properties, unless it is for a specified way that we just discussed, or they are an essential worker, they will be directed to go home. As you can see, Commissioner, there are a number of things that we set out. There again are 500 different entities that have applied for exemptions. I just read some correspondence where this is taking a long time to go through.
It is, and certainly you've mentioned Chief Inspector Cardwell. We've got others supporting him. But my point before is people should be prepared to be disappointed.
Absolutely.
We only need critical services on the road, and whilst we respect where some people are coming from, we've got to make some tough decisions.
Yes. And it's been hard.
Yeah, and the point before, Minister, it echoes right the way through. We want to work with people, but there is a line in the sand.
Yes.
And the legislation allows us to use certain powers to enforce.
Yes.
So we want to work with people, but if some individuals choose to ignore our guidance, our advice, and actually what essentially are directions, they may find themselves arrested.
And the part about it is, if you are an IT professional and you work at a company and you work at Acme Corporation, and the Acme Corporation, the alarm goes off, you will not get a pass for the whole 14 weeks, but you can call Robert Cardwell or the police emergency number, the police number at 295-0011, and they will give you specific instructions how to get that once-off opportunity to go. And so there are business critical people, and we don't want people to say, well, they're not taking thought for my business where there is an emergency. Where there is an emergency, people will be given that narrow scope where they can respond to that emergency, but they will not be given a pass for 14 days to move about without being fettered by the BPS.
Totally agree.
We're getting a lot of queries regarding grocery stores, Minister. One in particular regarding whether or not you can assist a family member who has no transportation to get to the grocery store.
During the quarantine, we're making it clear that one family member can go to the store so we want people to exercise common sense. You're going to be challenged on this by the members of the Bermuda Police Service. If someone in the house doesn't have transportation and you're going to take them to the grocery store, we believe that you must arrange that prior and give clear indication that you're going to take them to the grocery store and coming back. But suppose you live in St. George's and your family member lives in Somerset. Well, we don't believe that's a wise enterprise. We believe that we have to manage this, and we must do so intelligently. When people go to the grocery store, one family member into the grocery store at a time, be prepared to wait at a socially distanced period of time. If you need transportation, arrange that transportation in advance. We are not allowing the taxi services to be running and for you to call 295-4141. That will not happen. You will not be able to call a minibus service and get that. You will not be able to get on the bus and do that. That's why over the next 2 days, we are asking people to prepare for that. You know that this is coming. You have been given the opportunity. Let's maximize on the opportunity to get the sundries that we need for the next 7 days in the first instance. And if you need to re-up, you know that later in the week you could do that. But remember, let's plan. Don't say to us now that what about my family member in the car? You have the opportunity over the next 48 hours or just under to prepare for that. Let's prepare for it. This is an opportunity where when you come, we know now, what are you doing today? Oh, get in the line and wait. And have somebody drop you back home. The curfew starts at 8 o'clock tonight. Let's prepare for that. Everyone is being given the enough chance. Stop asking for the exceptions to the rule and understand where we're going. It is really difficult for us to answer every question from every company. We've given you what we want to do. Shelter in place. We're not doing this to harm you. We're doing this because the country needs it. If you have an emergency service, provisions will be made for a once-off emergency. If you do not have to be outside of your house, stay at home. If you need to go outside your house up to half a mile in front of your house. If you are a parent and you are in a blended family and you do 1 week on, 1 week off, we're saying we know this is not a perfect set of circumstances, but for the next 2 weeks, whomever has the children or the child as of Saturday, we're asking for that parent to hold on to the child and love them for the next 2 weeks.
I think just to the point you raised is we are asking people to try and problem solve themselves within the community. The government can't solve every single situation. People have got to take some personal responsibility for how they're going to adapt over the next 2 weeks. Now, there may be situations where somebody physically can't get to the shops, and we will publish some numbers where vulnerable people can contact. We'll try and find a solution. But it's not a pushback or a challenge, but if somebody's saying, I can't go, speak to your neighbours, reach out to people, try and come up with a solution. And if the situation allows, then we can work with that. But we can't answer every single question for thing, but we will make sure that those that are extremely vulnerable are looked after.
So if you are out, please have ID, identification, formal ID. Suppose you're working at Marketplace. Well, have your company ID or have a letter from your employers. Have on your uniform. If at all possible, in the left-hand side of the windshield, have that you're a medical doctor clearly embossed. Have that you work at Marketplace in the left-hand windshield of the car. The police and the Bermuda Regiment will stop you and they would ask you critical questions. When I was out on Sunday night, Commissioner, a gentleman was coming from the east end of the island and he was like, hey, this is the third checkpoint that I've been through tonight. Yeah. And we said to him, you're going to probably go through the same 3 checkpoints going back on each time. People have to be prepared for the questions to be asked. We're not going to be using our radios to say, listen, Wayne Caines just came through, let him through. We're going to go through that checkpoint every time. And so people have to be prepared that if you have to be out, leave home a little early if you're making 10 o'clock. Don't take the same half an hour if you're leaving from Somerset to come to the hospital. Leave home a few minutes earlier so you can factor in those stops.
We've instructed our police officers to follow a specific, and it's known as the 4E plan, and it starts off with engaging with people.
Yes.
So professionally, politely, then explaining why they're being stopped, encouraging them to follow the guidelines, and the finally is enforcement. But that's right the way down at the bottom.
Sure.
But it's just around making people aware that yes, you are going to be stopped, yes, you are going to be asked what you're doing,
yes,
where you're going, you are going to be asked for identification, and we will work with you to support you around what we're trying to achieve.
Absolutely.
Okay, Minister, I'm getting a few queries regarding dialysis treatment and individuals who need to get to dialysis for their treatment. It's a multi-day a week situation. What would be your response?
So my response will to where there are private dialysis patients, the private dialysis patients should, in the main, if they can be, if you're at one of the private facilities, you should ask if your treatment can be prior to the 14 days, if your treatment can be scheduled at a time that is not in curfew hours, if that is possible. After or during the shelter in place, we're going to have to get the names and the times of those emailed in so we can have those. That there are a number of people in our community that are on dialysis, and so in the main, we believe that if we can get a list from the Bermuda Hospitals Board of the time that people are going for dialysis and their names, that will prevent everyone that is on dialysis from emailing us directly. And so my recommendation, and I'll take this to the DERM, is that if there are private dialysis patients, if they can send us the names and contact details of the people en masse, and the Bermuda Hospitals Board en masse, if they can provide the Bermuda Police Service the names and the times of the people, as opposed to everyone on dialysis emailing the Bermuda Police Service or emailing our ministry with those times. I'm going to say that again. We believe and we know that this is a life-saving enterprise for people. That will be permitted. What we're simply doing is managing the people traveling on the road. We're going to ask for the Bermuda Hospitals Board, in the terms of people that are managed by the public sector, for them to give us the names and the times, and we will have those in our records, and the police, when they're asked, will be able to check and verify those names. If people are being kept and on dialysis with a private dialysis company, for them to send our ministry the names and the times and the details of those persons so we can have all of those details. Thank you for the opportunity to connect with the people of Bermuda, and I'm going to allow the Chief I'm going to let you start off with your thanks to everyone before we conclude.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, and I'm sure everybody will appreciate that there are a lot of people working extremely hard, excessive hours, health primarily, but right the way across the island, making sure that we work together and keep people safe. And I think from my role as Commissioner, we are part of a team, and our role is to make sure that people comply with the guidelines, but we will work with them, give advice, and we will be polite, professional, but there is a line in the sand that we ask people to observe.
Well, I'd like to thank your team in advance. I've been able to work with you for over a year now. You're very community-minded, very community-focused. I like the stance you took today when I saw the email mandating that all the officers put on their uniforms, and that 411 people, even those behind the desk, everyone will be out in the field for the next 2 weeks. It bode well for our community. When I saw that that was a strong position of leadership, you're very active and hands-on in the meetings. When asked to meet with the people of Bermuda via a non-traditional mean on Facebook Live, you were really never hesitated. I just looked, we have over 700 people watching this, and so it is actually, we're actually interacting with people in a non-traditional means. If you can send the ministry's thanks and the government's thanks to your colleagues, to let them know that they are valued. We do accept that they're away from their families at a difficult time, and their community loves them, and we have nothing but admiration and respect. If you can cascade that down to your offices, we will greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
I would like again to thank the Ministry of Health and that team, everybody that comes under the Ministry of Health, led by the Minister of Health and the Chief Medical Officer. We appreciate that which you're doing in our community. I'd like to thank my team, the DERM, and the Ministry of National Security for the work that they're doing. I would like to thank the Premier and the members of Cabinet. My respect for the Premier has quadrupled. I have seen him make difficult decisions. I'm watching when a commissioner makes these decisions. I can see the emotional toll that it takes on him, because he has the weight of our nation on his shoulders. He is a man of a very strong constitution. He has stepped up in a way that this country is privileged to have such a man leading it, and I'm honored to serve as a member of his cabinet. And I know that the rest of my cabinet colleagues, we're just delighted to be a part of the people of Bermuda, to serve the people of Bermuda, and it is our privilege. I'd like to thank the people in Bermuda in advance for honoring the rules of this community protection plan, respecting the shelter in place, and just looking out for each other. We know that we have some vulnerable members in our country that we're going to have to look after, and we will do so. We have to look after each other and check on each other, and we know that we have to be careful how we speak to each other, because some of us have not been in the confines of our home for 14 days with our loved ones for a very long time. This is a time where we all become vulnerable. We have to minimize the opportunity for us to respond in anger, to respond with that curt phrase, because after 14 days, we know what this can lead to. There are some guidelines that have been given heretofore. We haven't been having to stay in our house for 14 days. We have to do this day by day. Whilst you might be alone with your family in your house, as a community, we are together. I think at the end of the 14 days, we will realize that this has been a community effort, and we've been able to work together as a team. And I think that we have some positive things to share. And I guarantee that if a family spends time together, if a community comes together, we can only be stronger as a result. The shelter in place is not going to be easy, but I think it's something that it can be managed. How do I know this? Because we've seen other examples in the rest of the world where people have used the shelter in place, and it has made the world of the difference with reference to the spread of the disease. But there are some residual benefits, and that's of a community coming forward. It is an honor for the Commission and I to serve the people of Bermuda. Thank you for your trust, your gift of trust through service. I speak on behalf of the Premier and the Cabinet. Again, we will do everything in our power to make sure that we give you timely information, that we're transparent, that as we get information that we share it with you. Thank you to Nia and the team from DCI, and to the team, everyone that's working here. We appreciate the work that you're doing. Again, Bermuda, together we can make it through this.
And there will be, Minister, just a programming note, there will be a 5:30 press conference
today. There will
today
be at approximately 5:30 this afternoon.
with an update regarding more services
Absolutely.
regarding this. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you so much for all of your questions. Very thoughtful feedback. We appreciate it all. Thank you very much. Stay safe.